Thanks for being here. I know we initially released information in reference to the officer-involved shooting of Mr. Sanchez that happened on Tuesday night. We're going to provide you with a little bit of an update at this point. There's still a lot that we can't talk about because there is an ongoing investigation, as we do all officer-involved shootings. They're investigated criminally and presented to the district attorney's office, and that's where this incident is right now. Homicide is investigating it. It is not complete. It has not been given to the district attorney. I know there have been a lot of concerns about us having to take the life of a person that is speech and hearing impaired. And that is also a concern to us. You know, I do want to take the time to give my condolences to the Sanchez family. This is something that's tragic. Either way, any way around it, it's tragic, and my condolences do go out to the family for their loss. You know, this initially started, and I know you have a lot of this information, but it initially started from a call that we received on a hit-and-run accident that occurred about 57th and Shields. The individual that was involved in that hit-and-run was the deceased's father. When we received the call from a citizen, that citizen pointed out where that vehicle was, which was at the home of Mr. Sanchez. It was parked in the parking in the driveway. The incident was a fairly serious accident. Actually, we obtained footage where the vehicle that Mr. Sanchez, the deceased father, was driving actually was hit so hard that it rolled the vehicle. So it took a complete roll, landed on all four tires, and he continued to leave. It was still drivable, so he left. And that's when he ended up driving home and parking his car in the driveway. So when officers responded, the witness provided him with the information of where the deceased father's truck was located. So the officers responded to that area to try to find the person that was involved in the hit and run. At the point they did arrive, they were confronted with Mr. Sanchez, who was carrying a pipe that was actually designed as a weapon, as a club. It was taped. Also had a rope at the end of it that, you know, a rope that would attach to your wrist to help control it and maintain control of it. So it was designed to be a weapon. It was a fairly large weapon. Again, it's under investigation, so I'm not going to go into anything, you know, further in relationship to that, because we still haven't interviewed the officer that was involved that actually did the shooting. We have interviewed the officer that was involved in the tasing of the individual, and at this point we just need time to complete that investigation. The father was present. He was outside. He was present at the time of the shooting. We have interviewed the father. We've interviewed about 9 witnesses that were in the neighborhood that claimed to have seen the incident and heard the incident. So we're trying to just make sure that we're covering all of those bases, determine exactly what happened and whether or not that shooting was justified. Ultimately, we will have to decide administratively whether it was, but that will take place after the district attorney's office has had a chance to look at all the evidence to make a decision on whether or not criminal charges would be justified against our officer or not.
Chief Citty, are y'all waiting to interview Sergeant Barnes for the investigation to be complete before y'all interview him?
No, our process is the officers, we don't interview the officers for 48 hours. And I know some people agree with that, some people disagree with that. The reality of that is that officers can wait as long as they want. Officers have the same rights as citizens. Citizens don't have to. If we're investigating something criminally, citizens have the right not to be interviewed at all. They have the right not to incriminate themselves. And that's in the criminal investigation. A police officer has the same right. And I think the public, it's hard for them to understand that sometimes, but if it's a criminal investigation, a police officer does have the right to not speak, have an attorney present, speak with an attorney, and really they can choose the time when they want to be interviewed. So the issue with the delay in the interview at this point, which would probably have taken place today or tomorrow at the earliest, won't take place until next week, but it has to do with that officer's attorney is tied up in court and is unavailable. So, and he wants his attorney present, which he has the right for that, and most officers do. All the officers in officer-involved shootings in this day and time want an attorney present and be able to consult with them.
Chief Citty, how long has Sergeant Barnes been with the department?
You know, I'm not sure. He's not a rookie. He's been here 4 or 5 years or maybe longer, so he's been here a while.
And was he a supervisor?
No, he's not. He's just he's a sergeant. I know that Chris Barnes was. We hired him. We did hire him. He was out of the military, but he's been on the streets for a while. Now there was the lieutenant present. In fact, the first one on the scene was a lieutenant, and so Lieutenant Lindsay. He actually is the one that attempted to tase the suspect in the beginning, but actually the taser didn't work. We don't know for sure. We just know that only one prong, which hit the suspect that we know of, and if 2 of them don't connect, then the taser will not be effective.
Why were these officers not wearing body cams?
Well, we're in the process. We have 100 body cams out. And we want all of our officers wearing body cameras. We have 200 additional body cameras ordered that we purchased with a grant. As most people know here, there was a delay. We put body cameras out in the beginning. We created a policy. We got we went to arbitration. The arbitrator said we had to negotiate some things with the FOP, so we pulled the cameras off. That caused a considerable delay while we were trying to work out what the procedures would be for using the body-worn cameras. I can't put anything out like that without having procedures in place that give officers specific direction on how to use those cameras and when to turn them on, and that hold them accountable for turning them on. So that caused a significant delay, but at the time that we did come to an agreement after the arbitration, then we went ahead and reissued the 100, but we still, not only were we waiting for the grant funding to come in for the 200, but that helped delay that process. So eventually we'll have them. We're hoping to have them all 300 or more out by the end of October, and that would make those available to every officer that operates, that's in the field.
Chief Citty, when they pulled up on the street on Southeast 57 and approached the suspect, did they have their sirens and lights on their units?
I'm not sure. I don't know. But the cars were very visible. The officers now, I mean, one of the biggest concerns is that this person could not hear or speak. So the officers could yell commands all they wanted to, and he would not hear them. But the cars were very visible. They were parked directly in front of the house. The officers were in full uniform. The individual could see that they were police officers. They were clearly marked, and so he had to be aware. It'd be almost impossible for him to be aware that they were police officers. So, and I make this analogy. His father was in the front yard when it happened. His father does not speak English. The father was able to hear, but he didn't understand what the officers were saying. Those are some huge challenges in our community, because not all of our officers are bilingual, and it's impossible to be. So whether or not they can't speak English or they're unable to hear, that presents the same problem. The commands would not have been understood or heard either way. So, and that's a challenge, but at the same time, the officers are clearly, they're dressed the way they are, so they're identifiable. And it would be almost impossible for them not to know, and the subject that's deceased not to know that they were police officers. So, again, there's a lot still that I need to find out during the investigation, and so I'm not jumping to any conclusions or assumptions at this point.
Chief Citty, if we found out later that he wasn't able to hear.
Mm-hmm.
What was brought up at our station was, what about the teaching of sign language to officers? Not like the whole language of sign, but like stop, down. Do you think that could be a possibility in the future? I know it's in the heat of the moment. They're tunnel vision. They're focused on their subject in hand. People are yelling this. They're not hearing that because they're focused on this man. But perhaps if they did hear that, do you think that maybe in the future you might be able to train officers to sign, stop, down, or anything like that?
You know, I'm always open to training, and you know, there is our population, and the things that the officers have to respond to require a lot of knowledge about a lot of different, you know, disabilities, mental health, drug addiction. So we do a lot of training, and I won't discount that. I know that we don't do that. We do teach officers in recruit school conversational Spanish. I don't know of any other department in the country that does that. There's a considerable amount in our recruit school, so that they are able just to, you know, communicate with somebody, just a minimal amount, and be able to do that. So I'm open. You know, I have made contact with the Oklahoma Association for the Deaf and requested a meeting to have some of those discussions. I know in texting back and forth, I know they want to develop a task force, and you know, I advised them that I was more than willing to work with them and meet with them, and any suggestions that they have, and anything that we can do to make our job, you know, when we respond to create the best possible outcome, we'll do that. So I won't say yes, I won't say no, but I know we're open to you know, doing the best job we can and providing any training that would help us do that.
I know it's still early on, but would you say that there has been a few lessons learned throughout this?
It's too early.
Well,
We always learn lessons, you know, usually at every event, but at this point, it just you know, you just don't know, and it's one of those things where if officers respond, it's to know they're deaf and they can't hear. It may take some time to figure that out, and in this case, it happened very quickly. A lot of these things happen very, very quickly. So,
will the lack of body cameras hamper the investigation or make it lengthy?
well, I don't. It won't make it. It won't make it any. I don't think it'd make it any longer, you know, and it wouldn't make it any shorter, because even though you have pictures, you still have to interview people. You know, pictures tell. You know, they tell a certain thing, but they don't tell everything. That's just a photo. You know, that body-worn camera will only photograph a small area. There's a lot more to an incident than just what you see on the camera. So you know, that's the quick answer is no. It won't shorten it. It won't make it any longer. We'll still have to do. It'll just add more evidence to that and benefit the investigation to a great deal.
Do you know if there's video out there? I know that there's video of the crash.
Right.
And then there's some houses around there that some have surveillance cameras and stuff, but have you been able to determine if anybody had their cell phone or if there's some of the houses had it at all?
Like I said, we've interviewed 9 people, witnesses in and around that neighborhood, and I don't know that we've obtained any other. You know, most people are pretty eager to give that footage up, so I don't know of any at this point.
Has the father of the deceased been charged with the hit and run at all?
Not at this point.
Will he be charged?
Yeah, it was a hit and run. He will be. I assume he will be charged. It'll probably be charged as a misdemeanor because I think the individual in the other car, she was hurt but not seriously hurt. She was not transported to the hospital. As severe as that accident was that caused the rollover, which is significant if you've seen the video, it's amazing he was able to drive off after rolling it over. Her vehicle was still drivable. So,
why he left at all?
Pardon?
Do you know why he left at all?
We don't know for sure. I don't know. He may have said in the interview when the detectives interviewed him. I do know that he did not have a driver's license, and that may have played a factor.
A lot of the neighbors were saying that they were yelling at the officers, trying to tell them, he's deaf, don't shoot.
Mm-hmm.
Did the officers hear them, do you know?
Like I said, we've only interviewed one, and I don't know. I have not read the entire interview of the officer. So, and really, you know, at that point, it's probably irrelevant as quickly as it was occurring, you know, because unless there's something we can see in hindsight that the officers could have done, you know, in responding to that better, but it did happen very quickly. And again, that's something that we'll look at and review. And again, somebody mentioned lessons learned. If we made a mistake, we'll be the first to admit that, and we'll address it and try to do things better. But at this point, it's just too early. I'm not going to speculate on any of that.
To clarify, can you confirm, are you saying that currently officers don't undergo any kind of deaf or hard of hearing training?
Yeah, we do. I'll have to check our records, but we do. Yeah, we do extensive training with autism, and it's when somebody can't hear you, because we've had situations where you try to stop them, they don't hear the sirens. I mean, you have lights, but still they don't hear the sirens, and so you try to make officers aware of that. I mean, it's autism. There are things that you can do in dealing with the autistic, for instance, or somebody that suffers from mental illness. If you can't hear, you can't speak, and you ascertain that, then we have to, obviously officers have to be more patient and get interpreters out and provide them with interpreters because they have a right to know what they're being arrested for or questioned by having an interpreter. In this case, when officers are approached with a weapon, there's not much time to be patient in many cases. So again, it depends on the circumstances when we get there, but we do a lot of training in reference to a lot of disabilities, and I'd have to try to verify to what extent, if any, that we've had with someone that can't hear or speak.
Do you know how many shots were fired and how many hit?
I'm not going to get it. I do, but I'm not going to get into the details at this point. I want the investigation. We still have to interview the other officer, and those types of questions really need to be posed to those individuals and not within the media.
How long was it between when Lieutenant Lindsay arrived at the home and Sergeant Barnes responded?
It was pretty quick. It was. I don't know the exact. But it was pretty quickly. They were there pretty close together. I know they were both confronted at the same time by the individuals, so they both got there pretty quickly.
Back to the taser, Lieutenant Lindsay's taser. I know. I think it was Captain Matthews said yesterday. Witnesses had told investigators that it appeared that the taser and the handgun were fired at the same time. You said earlier that the taser malfunctioned. Were they fired at the same time?
Well, the taser didn't malfunction. It's just that when you shoot a taser, it doesn't always. The probes. You have two probes. They both have to enter so that they can connect. They both have to enter into the body. Well, if one hits the body and one doesn't connect, then you don't have that connection that would cause the person to be disabled. So it's not that the taser malfunctioned. It's that the prongs you just missed. For whatever reason, you missed, and that happens quite often. So, to answer your question, I really don't know at this point. The investigation will bear out more. I know they said they thought the shot and the taser fired simultaneously, but then you also have one witness that said they usually hear the clicking of the taser because they do click when they're fired or they're deployed, and they didn't hear that. So, I mean, those are statements and information that you really have to be careful with because you can't take them as actually factual. They were both fired probably close together at least. Which one fired the first, I don't know at this point. We may never know exactly at what point, but they can be fired so closely together that people think they were fired at the same time. I mean, even officers can't tell you that. There's too much going on. So.
Is it
Did the
protocol?
second officer have a taser on him myself?
I do not know if he had a taser, but I can tell you this: the training that we go through, which is best practice and necessary, is that you do not, if you've got two officers there, one officer may have a taser and try to use the taser, the other officer provides cover fire, because if that taser doesn't work, then you still want to have that backup of the firearm to protect both the officers.
What do you want the community to know? I mean, some people maybe watch this and stuff, and they're concerned about this and stuff. I mean, what's the main message you want out there today?
Well, the message, obviously I want the community to trust this department and that we're doing everything that we should be doing in investigating this, that we'll do everything, if necessary, to hold officers accountable. We have policies and procedures in place. We really are doing a lot with de-escalation. Officers, approaching things and de-escalating things so that we have the best, again, like I said before, the best possible outcome. That doesn't mean that the shooting a shooting wouldn't still take place. It's just that officers are doing a much better job, and we're doing a lot more training in different situations in trying to slow things down. But again, in certain circumstances, and this may be one of them, you don't have the opportunity to slow things down. So the things just happen, and you don't have that opportunity to de-escalate. Your de-escalation initially may be the use of deadly force. It may be your first option, only option. So, we'll look at that and determine. But this department it really does stay out front in best practices. And again, we want to serve the public. We have the responsibility of serving the entire public, regardless of who they are, what disability they have. And if we find things that we can do better, then I can promise you we will do better. And if that includes training, we will do that. So we've done that. We've done that historically. This department's been progressive in that respect. I've taken a great responsibility in making sure that we have been. It's not always easy. Police culture is difficult at times. I mean, any culture is difficult to change. So, but this department, I have found that the officers are more receptive to those changes and have been more receptive to de-escalation than I've seen in a lot of other major cities. So, again, you can do everything. You can do everything possible. It's sometimes, and you're still going to have this happen. So, it's a difficult job for officers, and it's something that we have to weigh and discuss, and again meeting with organizations on the hearing and speech impaired public and on their behalf is something that's important for us to do. We've done that before with other persons that represent persons with disabilities, and so we take it seriously, and we try to do the best job we can. And these situations are dynamic. It's emotional. In this case, you had a father that the police were looking for, and you had a son that, for whatever reason, confronted the officers with a weapon. And we'll never know exactly why, but that's what happened here.
Chief City, do you know how long from start to finish this incident, how long it happened, or how long?
I don't know. I know it started at 10:15. I think that the shooting occurred at 10:15, so I'm not sure what time the accident occurred. But by the time the officers got there, it was just minutes, seconds. It transpired pretty quickly. I think when the officers got there, he was on the front porch initially. So the officers exited their cars, and I think one went into the driveway area between two cars, and another one behind a tree. And so, and the person came out with the weapon.
So we know it was just the father in the truck, just him driving alone. Is that what we know?
As far as we know, yes. And it's amazing. I mean, he must have been wearing a seatbelt because he wasn't ejected, and it rolled and landed on all four wheels and was still able to drive away. So, it's amazing that he was able to do that.
There wasn't a sobriety test or anything done on him?
I don't think so. Not at that point. Now they did interview him, and if they would have felt like he was intoxicated, there would have been. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you very much.